The Holy Shroud of Turin. 7 unexplained facts that defy science and prove the resurrection. Stop fighting over doubt. The blood stains and wounds are historically perfect. The cloth is the silent witness to the most powerful event in history. 7 facts that confirm the verdict. The shroud is real. The most compelling piece of physical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ lies not in a marble sarcophagus or a philosophical treatise, but in a single, ancient, unassuming piece of linen cloth housed in the Cathedral of Turin, Italy. This cloth, known as the Holy Shroud of Turin, has been labeled by scientists as a scientific anomaly, an artifact that by all laws of physics and chemistry should not exist. Imagine the greatest forensic challenge in human history. Every known method of forgery, artistry, chemistry, and scorch technique has been applied to this cloth for decades by the world's most brilliant minds. Yet their collective, shocking conclusion remains the same. The image on the shroud is an unsolved mystery. It is a challenge to the very foundation of material science. The image is either the result of an unprecedented, inexplicable natural phenomenon, or it is the silent, permanent photograph of a supernatural singularity, the moment a mortal body transcended matter and rose from the grave. Today, we move past faith-based assumptions and confront the cold, hard physical evidence. We will expose the 7 unexplained facts about the shroud. These facts are not debatable opinions. They are verified forensic characteristics that eliminate nearly every known possibility of forgery from the 1st century through the Middle Ages and even up to modern times. This is the ultimate spiritual forensics report, detailing why the shroud is the single most powerful, enduring testimony to the reality of the resurrection. Fact 1. The impossibility of the image, the perfect negative. The first scientific fact that defeats centuries of artistic scrutiny is the impossibility of the image, specifically the fact that the image visible on the shroud is a perfect, non-directional photographic negative. For centuries, the faint, sepia-toned image on the shroud was dismissed as either a religious painting or a scorch mark. It was faint, vague, and difficult to discern the facial details. This all changed in 1898, when Italian photographer Secondo Pia was granted permission to take the first ever photograph of the relic. When Pia developed his photographic plate, the image reversed. The areas that were dark on the shroud became light on the negative, and the areas that were light became dark. The result was instantaneous and profound. The photographic negative revealed a perfectly sharp, anatomically flawless positive image of a man with deep wounds, a beard, and a profound, solemn expression. This was the moment the shroud transitioned from art to scientific anomaly. The science of inversion. An image only acts as a photographic negative if the intensity of the darkness on the cloth is inversely proportional to the light that would be absorbed during photography. For this to happen naturally, the human body itself had to act as the positive object, generating a negative image onto the linen. If an artist had painted the shroud, the painting itself would be the positive image, and the photographic negative would appear as a distorted, chaotic inversion of colors, a visual mess. The shroud's negative image is perfect, proving the image was not painted or manually shaded. Furthermore, the image possesses no directionality, no brush strokes, and no discernible outlines. The discoloration, the change in the fiber's chemical structure that creates the image, is uniform and non-fluorescent. This rules out dyes, paints or pigments, which would be visible under chemical analysis and microscopy. The image literally violates the laws of conventional art and staining. The scientific question moved from who painted this to what energy created this. This forensic reality is the first great pillar of evidence, confirming the shroud defies human explanation. Fact 2. The 3D information, the signature of penetrative force. The second, most powerful fact demonstrating the image's supernatural origin is the embedded 3D information, the shocking reality that the image intensity holds an accurate topographic map of the body underneath. This proves the image was created by a penetrative force, not simple contact or shading. The NASA VP-8 test. In the 1970s, the Shroud Research Project, STURP, utilized technology initially developed for NASA, the VP-8 image analyzer. This device converts the varying shades of light intensity in a two-dimensional image into measurements of distance, generating a three-dimensional model. When a normal photograph or painting is processed through the VP-8, the resulting model is grotesquely distorted, as a painter shades areas based on artistic choice, not actual distance. However, when the photographic negative of the shroud was fed into the VP-8, the analyzer produced a perfect, fully detailed, accurate, three-dimensional topographic map of a human being. The darkest areas of the image corresponded to the points on the cloth that were closest to the body, nose, forehead, chest, and the lightest areas corresponded to the points that were farthest away, eyes, neck, waist. This means the image's intensity is inversely proportional to the cloth's distance from the body's surface. The scientific implication: this is the ultimate proof against human forgery. No artist, even Leonardo da Vinci, working without a computer or advanced optics, could have painted shades based on the distance between the cloth and the body beneath it. The image had to be formed by a type of radiation or energy burst that acted perpendicular to the cloth, recording the spatial information of the body onto the linen surface. The shroud is the two-dimensional record of a three-dimensional structure, proving that the body was illuminated by a force that transcended physical space and matter at the exact moment the image was generated. This physical impossibility is the reason so many scientists conclude the image must be the result of a singular, non-replicable event. Fact 3. The absence of capillarity, the surface-only coloration. The third piece of forensic evidence that dismantles all theories of painting or staining is the absence of capillarity, the astonishing reality that the image coloration is confined to a microscopic layer on the absolute surface of the linen fibers. The fiber analysis. When chemical scientists analyzed individual threads of the shroud, they discovered that the coloration that forms the man's image exists only in the outermost layer of the cellulose, a layer approximately 200 nanometers, 200 billionths of a meter thick. Crucially, the coloration does not follow the laws of capillary action. Capillarity dictates that any liquid water, dye, blood, or paint when applied to fabric will be absorbed along the length of the fibers and soak into the internal core of the thread. On the shroud, the discoloration exists only on the crowns of the outermost fibers, like dust settled on a mountain peak, and the internal core of the threads remains perfectly clean and white, eliminating forgery methods. This finding is the chemical nail in the coffin for forgery theories. Paint or dye would have immediately penetrated the core of the threads. Scorching. While scorches can be superficial, attempting to reproduce an anatomically perfect image across a 14-foot cloth with controlled scorching is technologically impossible, especially in the 14th century. Vapor stain. Any chemical vapor or staining agent that caused the color change would have diffused throughout the thread structure. The only way to achieve this surface-only coloration is through an instantaneous, non-liquid energy transfer that acted on the molecular bonds of the cellulose fibers closest to the body. This energy burst was so gentle and brief that it did not cause the fibers to burn, thermal decomposition, yet powerful enough to chemically transform the surface into the faint, sepia-toned image. This specific phenomenon has never been replicated under laboratory conditions. The shroud is an artifact of unknown physics, pointing directly to the moment the physical body was simultaneously illuminated and dematerialized. Fact 4. The blood stains. The proof of suffering. The fourth fact moves from the mystery of the image to the certainty of the trauma. The forensic reality of the bloodstains, evidence that confirms the torture and death of the man on the shroud, aligns perfectly with the gospel accounts. Analysis. Unlike the body image, which is a chemical mystery, the markings that indicate wounds are composed of real, biologically accurate blood. Forensic analysis, including spectroscopic examination and microchemical tests, has confirmed the presence of hemoglobin and serum albumin, undeniable markers of human blood. Human blood type AB. While the spiritual significance is debated, the consistent finding of AB blood type aligns with other ancient relics from the same region. Bilirubin and high stress markers. Critically, the blood contains high concentrations of bilirubin and other stress markers. Bilirubin is released in large amounts when a victim suffers extreme physical trauma, intense psychological stress, and internal lack of oxygen prior to death. This is the physiological signature of a person who has undergone a torturous ordeal, confirming the man on the shroud died not quickly, but through immense suffering. Forensic pathology. The blood stains are not random. They tell a precise story of Roman crucifixion and scourging. The shroud shows scourging wounds, hundreds of small dumbbell-shaped contusions across the back, arms and legs, consistent with the use of a Roman flagrum, a whip with lead balls and sharp bone fragments. 2. Crown of thorns. Puncture wounds circling the entire scalp, consistent with a cap-like thorn helmet rather than a simple wreath. 3. Nail wounds. Distinct blood flow from the wrists, not the palms. The palms cannot support a crucified body's weight, confirming the brutality of the Roman method. 4. Spear wound. A large elliptical stain on the right side of the chest, indicating a fatal puncture that released both blood and a clear fluid serum, precisely matching John 19:34, water and blood. The most stunning forensic detail is the two different flows of blood. Pre-mortem, thin, dark, clotted blood that flowed while the man was alive or dying on the cross, and post-mortem, blood that flowed after the man was placed horizontally on the shroud, indicating wounds were reopened or that the clotted blood liquefied. This level of forensic detail eliminates any possibility of a painter or forger attempting to crudely simulate wounds. The blood flow patterns are medically and historically accurate to the crucifixion of a man subjected to maximum Roman brutality. Fact 5. The dating controversy. The rebuttal of the Middle Ages. The fifth unexplained fact delves into the scientific controversy that has plagued the shroud's reputation. The dating controversy, specifically the famous 1988 carbon-14 test and the massive scientific rebuttal that followed. The 1988 carbon-14 test. In 1988, 3 laboratories, Oxford, Tucson and Zurich, conducted the only carbon-14 test ever publicly performed on the shroud. The results, published in Nature, concluded the shroud dated from 1260 to 1390 AD, placing it firmly in the medieval period and classifying it as a sophisticated forgery. This single test result dominated the public discourse for decades. The grounds for rebuttal. However, subsequent scientific analysis by independent researchers argued that the 1988 test sample was fatally flawed due to contamination. The evidence points to sample contamination. The sample used was cut from a highly damaged corner of the shroud. Research suggests this corner was subject to intensive handling and was repaired during the 16th century fire by the Poor Clares nuns, using a technique called French reweaving, which involved weaving newer cotton threads into the ancient linen. This newer medieval carbon would have artificially skewed the entire sample's date toward the Middle Ages. 2. Biological contamination. The shroud survived multiple fires and was housed in various churches. It is biologically contaminated by massive amounts of carbon-containing residue, including fungi, bacteria, and smoke deposit. Chemical analysis showed the sample was far from pristine, which dramatically compromises the accuracy of carbon-14 dating. 3. Vaporized carbon contamination. The intense heat from the 1532 fire would have caused high levels of carbon monoxide and vaporized carbon to be absorbed into the linen, artificially redating the cloth to a much younger age than its actual antiquity. Counter-evidence. While the 1988 test remains the only C14 result, other scientific methods point strongly to a first-century origin. Pollen analysis. Dr. Max Frey identified pollen grains from over 50 plant species embedded in the shroud. A significant number of these species are native only to Jerusalem and the Anatolian region, flowering only in the spring, matching the timeline of the Passion. Textile weave. Textile experts confirm the shroud's unique 3-1 herringbone twill weave was common in the Middle East during the 1st century, not typical of European medieval linen. Historical documentation. Strong arguments linking the shroud to the Mandilion, an image of Christ previously housed in Edessa and Constantinople, place its existence firmly in the 1st millennium. The final verdict on the shroud's age is an open scientific question, with mounting evidence challenging the single, contaminated C14 result, forcing the debate back toward the 1st century. Fact 6. The posture of resurrection. The collapsed burial cloth. The 6th fact is arguably the most theologically profound and scientifically challenging. The posture of resurrection, confirming that the body was removed by an event of transmutation, not by human hands. Analysis. 1st century Jewish burial customs involved tightly binding the body with strips of linen and applying adhesive spices. Removing a body from this cocoon, particularly after it had suffered massive wounds, would cause the blood clots to stick to the linen. Forcing the body out would inevitably lead to smearing, tearing, and smudging of the image and the bloodstains, yet the shroud displays none of these signs. The image is clear, the bloodstains are intact, and the cloth is perfectly preserved. The image suggests an event where the cloth simply collapsed through the space where the body once lay. The shroud literally displays the body's three-dimensional reality without ever having been in complete frictional contact with it. The forensic paradox. This creates an absolute forensic paradox. 1. The body was present, proven by the blood, the wounds, and the contact points. Fact 4. 2. The image was formed, proving the body was generating energy while wrapped. Fact 1. 3. The body left without disturbing the cloth, proving the body dematerialized or transcended matter. This reality aligns perfectly with the Gospel account in John 26:7, where Peter and John entered the tomb and found the linen cloths lying there. The cloths had collapsed, undisturbed, maintaining their original shape. The body of Jesus had passed through the cloth. The shroud is the silent witness to the moment of spiritual victory over matter. This fact alone makes forgery impossible, as no amount of care, heat, or chemical process can reproduce the effect of a body vanishing within its own wrapping. Fact 7. The Transcendent Energy Event, the signature of the divine. The 7th and final fact is, The unavoidable scientific synthesis of all preceding data, the transcendent energy event, the inescapable conclusion that the image formation required a powerful, inexplicable energy burst at the moment of the resurrection. The converging evidence, every unexplained fact, the perfect 3D mapping, Fact 2, the surface-only coloration, Fact 3, the non-directional nature, Fact 1, and the lack of smearing, Fact 6, points to a single common denominator, a massive, instantaneous, non-thermal, non-directional energy release emanating from the body. Physicists who have studied the shroud hypothesize that the energy required to create the image's specific characteristics is equivalent to a vacuum ultraviolet VUV burst, or a high-energy photon burst. This energy would have needed to act instantaneously, perhaps in a time frame shorter than 140 billionth of a second, to prevent diffusion and maintain the surface-only coloration. Theological conclusion. This is the signature of the divine. The shroud is the physical remnant of the resurrection, the single moment when the God-man transformed his mortal body into an immortal, glorious body. The scientific requirement for a massive, inexplicable energy burst aligns perfectly with the theological concept of the resurrection being the moment of ultimate supernatural power. The image on the shroud is the recorded residue of Christ's transition from matter to glory. The shroud challenges the core tenets of naturalism. It presents a physical artifact that demands a supernatural cause. It forces the scientist and the skeptic to confront the possibility that the gospel accounts are not just theological claims, but historical reports of a verifiable, world-altering physical event. Summary and call to action. We have completed the forensic analysis. You have confronted the 7 unexplained facts, the perfect negative, the 3D information, the surface-only coloration, the real blood stains, the deep dating controversies, the unsmudged posture of collapse, and the necessity of a transcendent energy event. The Shroud of Turin remains the world's most scientifically studied anomaly. It defies forgery, rejects staining, and demands an explanation rooted in supernatural power. It is the single most compelling piece of circumstantial evidence for the physical resurrection of Jesus Christ. The shroud calls you to a verdict. It asks you to choose between a scientific puzzle that has no solution under the laws of nature and the miraculous power of the Son of Jesus. If this cloth is real, the resurrection is not just a belief. It is a historical, documented fact with a physical photograph. Your life is defined by the verdict you reach today. Do you accept the testimony of the linen? Do you accept the challenge it poses to your doubt? Comment below with the word verdict to declare your commitment to the truth revealed by the shroud. Subscribe to this channel as we continue to expose the greatest mysteries that prove the power and presence of Jesus Christ in the world. Amen.